Alex had always lived a simple life. He wasn't rich, and he didn't have a lot of excitement. He worked at a small bookstore in a quiet town, and most of his days were spent reading or helping customers. He liked it that way. But one morning, everything changed. It all started with a letter. The letter arrived on a normal Tuesday. Alex had just finished his coffee and was getting ready to head to work when he noticed the envelope. It wasn't like any letter he had ever received. The envelope was thick and had strange markings on it. It looked important, mysterious. It was addressed to him, but the name on the return address made Alex stop cold. Captain Jarek. Captain Jarek was Alex's old friend, a man he hadn't seen or heard from in years. Jarek had been a space explorer, traveling across the stars on missions that most people only dreamed of. Alex remembered the stories Jarek would tell when they were younger, how he would always brag about seeing planets no one had ever heard of and meeting beings from different galaxies. But that was before Alex lost contact with him. The last time Alex heard from Jarek was a message saying he had retired, that he was done with exploring and ready to settle down. That was years ago. The letter was handwritten in neat, precise handwriting, and Alex felt a strange feeling in his stomach as he began to read. To my dear friend Alex, the letter began. If you are reading this, then I am no longer with you. You always said you would help me if I ever needed anything, and now I ask you to do so. I am leaving you something valuable. You may not understand it, but I know you will do what is right. I have left you my most prized possession. She is an alien woman, someone I promised to take care of if anything happened to me. Her name is Zara. She is from a distant planet, and she has no family left. She will need your help, your protection. Please care for her as I would have. Zara will arrive soon. She knows you will take care of her. With all my thanks, Captain Jarek. Alex stared at the letter, his mind racing. What did this mean? Why would Jarek leave him an alien wife? An alien woman? The thought seemed impossible, like something out of a science fiction book. Alex had heard Jarek talk about his adventures, but he never mentioned anything about being married to an alien. His first reaction was disbelief. This had to be some kind of joke. Jarek had always been the type to pull pranks, to play around with his friends. But then Alex remembered something. Jarek was serious when he wrote this letter. He had promised to protect Zara, and Alex knew Jarek always kept his word. There was no way to turn back now. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he thought about what to do. He felt a sense of responsibility, mixed with fear. What if this was real? What if an alien woman was really coming to live with him? After a few moments of hesitation, Alex stood up. He walked over to his window, looking out at the quiet street. His mind was spinning with questions. How would he take care of an alien woman? What did she need? What would she be like? Alex decided he couldn't just ignore it. He had to find out. He had to be sure. He grabbed the letter and walked outside, his thoughts heavy with uncertainty. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain: his life was about to change forever. The following days passed slowly. Alex couldn't stop thinking about the letter. He tried to ignore it, to tell himself it was just some mistake, but every time he looked at the envelope, his mind would race. Finally, the day came. The doorbell rang. Alex froze. His heart skipped a beat. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he knew this was it. He took a deep breath and opened the door. Standing on his doorstep was a woman, but she wasn't like anyone Alex had ever seen before. She was tall, with glowing lavender skin and silver hair that shimmered in the sunlight. Her eyes were large and bright, with a strange glow to them, like they held secrets from another world. She wore clothes that looked like nothing Alex had ever seen, made from some kind of fabric that seemed to change colors as she moved. She smiled softly at him, but there was something in her eyes that showed she was nervous, unsure. She spoke in a language Alex didn't understand, her voice melodic and calming. Alex stammered. He wasn't sure what to say. This was really happening, The woman in front of him was Zara, the alien he had inherited from his old friend. Zara stepped forward, her eyes studying Alex. She didn't seem surprised, but she also didn't seem entirely at ease. She knew why she was here, but she wasn't sure how to feel about it. "I'm Zara," she said, speaking slowly in a voice that seemed to match the calm of her demeanor. "I was waiting for you." Alex didn't know what to say. He just nodded, still trying to make sense of it all. He stepped aside, letting her in. He wasn't sure what he had gotten himself into, but he knew one thing for sure: his life would never be the same again. Zara arrives. Alex stood in the doorway, staring at Zara. She was even more stunning up close. Her lavender skin glowed softly in the sunlight, and her silver hair shimmered like it was made of stardust. Her eyes, large and bright, held a strange, beautiful glow that seemed to speak of things Alex couldn't understand. He had never seen anyone, or anything, like her before. Zara stood there, waiting for him to say something. She was quiet, almost too quiet, as if she wasn't sure how to begin. Alex felt his heart race, and his mind scrambled for words. He had no idea what he was supposed to do now. "Hi," Alex said awkwardly, unsure of what to say next. He looked at her and then at the ground, his hands nervously folding the letter he had been holding. I'm Alex. You must be Zara." She nodded, giving him a soft smile. Her voice was calm and gentle as she spoke. "Yes, I am Zara. It is good to meet you, Alex." There was a slight hesitation in her words, and Alex could tell she was just as uncertain about this meeting as he was. She was looking around, taking in her new surroundings. Her eyes settled on the small house behind Alex, the quiet neighborhood, and the simple life that Alex led. "Please," Alex said, stepping aside to let her in. "Come in." Zara stepped carefully inside, her movements graceful but careful. She didn't seem uncomfortable, but there was an air of sadness around her, a kind of loneliness that Alex couldn't shake. She looked around the room, noticing the old furniture, the piles of books scattered around the living room. Alex's home wasn't fancy, but it was warm and cozy. It was the kind of place where people could relax, take their time, and feel safe. "I'm sorry about all this," Alex said, scratching the back of his head. "This is all so strange. I don't know what to say." Zara looked at him, her eyes softening. "You do not need to apologize," she said. "I know this is not normal for you. It is not normal for me either." Alex nodded, understanding the truth in her words. He was still trying to wrap his head around the idea that he had inherited an alien wife from his old friend. But Zara didn't look like she was a burden. She didn't look like someone who needed pity. She looked strong, even though there was a sadness in her eyes that Alex couldn't ignore. They both stood there in silence for a moment, neither one sure of what to do next. Alex cleared his throat, trying to break the awkwardness between them. "So, what now? Do you want to sit down?" Zara nodded and slowly made her way to the couch. She sat down delicately, crossing her legs as she looked around the room again, her expression unreadable. Alex stood nearby, unsure of whether to sit or stand. He felt like he was supposed to be the one in charge now, the one who should make everything feel okay. But nothing felt okay. This was so far outside his comfort zone that it almost didn't feel real. "So, you're from another planet?" Alex asked, trying to fill the silence with some kind of conversation. "What's it like there?" Zara turned her gaze to him, and her eyes seemed to light up at the question. "It is very different," she began, her voice soft but steady. "My home is called Siloria. It is a world of great beauty, with forests that shine at night and oceans that sparkle like the stars." She paused for a moment, looking down at her hands. "But it is also a place of conflict, a place where many of my people were lost." Alex could see the sadness in her face as she spoke. He could hear the pain in her voice, though she was trying her best to keep it under control. I'm sorry, Alex said, his heart going out to her. I didn't know. Zara smiled faintly, though the sadness didn't leave her eyes. It is not your fault. It is just my story, but it does not define me. Alex nodded, unsure of how to comfort her. He felt out of his depth, like he was standing in a place he didn't belong. But at the same time, he felt a strange connection to Zara, even if he didn't fully understand why she was here or what he was supposed to do. Is there anything I can do? Alex asked, his voice uncertain. Anything you need. Zara looked at him, her expression softening even more. I need time to adjust, to learn, to understand this world. But for now, I need nothing more than your kindness. Alex nodded again, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. She didn't expect him to have all the answers. She didn't need him to be perfect. She just needed him to be there. And in that moment, Alex realized that despite the strangeness of the situation, he was willing to be there for her. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew he couldn't turn away from someone who needed him. So, Alex said, trying to keep things light. Do you want something to eat? I could make us some dinner. Zara looked up at him, and for the first time, she smiled a real smile. It was small, but it was there. I would like that, she said. Alex smiled back, relieved to see her warming up. As he moved to the kitchen, he realized that while this was all new and strange, maybe it wasn't so bad. Maybe he wasn't alone in this after all. Zara's story. The evening sun cast a soft glow through the windows as Alex and Zara sat at the small dining table. The meal was simple, a salad, some bread, and soup. Nothing special, but it was enough. Zara had only taken a small bite, her eyes still distant. Alex noticed she was lost in thought, her gaze far away. He didn't want to press her, but he could tell there was something on her mind. So, Alex started, trying to sound casual. What's your story, Zara? How did you end up here? Zara looked up at him, her eyes meeting his for the first time that evening. Her gaze was soft, but full of sadness. She put down her spoon and sighed. It seemed like she had been waiting for this moment, for someone to ask her about her past. But at the same time, Alex could see how difficult it was for her to speak about it. She took a deep breath before she began, her voice quiet and steady. It began long before I met Captain Jarek, she said, her words slow and measured. I was born on Siloria, a planet far from here. We were a peaceful people, living in harmony with the land. Our cities were built into the great mountains, and we had vast forests and oceans. It was a beautiful world. Zara paused, her fingers tracing the edge of her soup bowl. She seemed lost in her thoughts, as if remembering her home brought both comfort and pain. But not everything was perfect. My people were divided. There were those who wanted peace, and others who wanted power. It led to conflict, war. For years, our world was torn apart. I lost my family during the war, my parents, my siblings. I was alone. It was then that I met Captain Jarek. Alex listened quietly, his heart heavy as Zara spoke. He had no idea how painful her past was, how much she had suffered. He could see now that she wasn't just some alien who had appeared in his life. She was someone who had been through a great deal of loss and heartache. Jarek was different from the others, Zara continued, her voice barely above a whisper. He was kind. He didn't see me as an alien or as someone from a broken world. He saw me as a person. He promised me that he would protect me, that I would never be alone again. She looked down, a single tear sliding down her cheek. Alex wanted to say something, to comfort her, but he didn't know the right words. All he could do was listen, letting her tell her story. But Jarek wasn't the only one who wanted to help me. Zara went on, her voice growing a little stronger. There were others, people who saw me as a prize, a tool. They wanted to control me, use me for their own gain. They didn't care about my past, my pain. They only saw me as something to be conquered. Zora's eyes burned with anger now, the sadness giving way to a fire deep within her. Alex felt a chill as she spoke, but he also admired her strength. Despite everything she had gone through, she was still standing, still fighting. When Jarek came to my world, he didn't just promise to protect me, Zora said, her voice fierce. He took me away from all that. He helped me escape, gave me a new life. But I wasn't free from my past. My enemies followed me. I couldn't hide forever. She paused, wiping the tear from her cheek. Her eyes met Alex again, but this time they were full of determination. Jarek knew the danger I was in. That's why he left me with you. He knew I needed a safe place, a place where I could heal. He trusted you, Alex, and now so do I. Alex was silent for a long moment. His mind raced as he tried to process everything Zora had just told him. Her life had been full of pain, betrayal, and loss. And now she was in his home, asking for his help. He didn't know if he was ready for this kind of responsibility. But one thing was clear. Zara needed him. I don't know what to say. Alex said finally, his voice soft. I don't know how to help you with all that, but I'll try. I'll do my best. Zara smiled faintly, her eyes still filled with emotion. That's all I ask, Alex. Just be here. That's all I need. Alex nodded, feeling a strange sense of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He had never imagined his life would take such a turn, but here he was, in the middle of a story that was bigger than anything he could have ever imagined. And as he looked at Zara, sitting quietly across from him, he realized something important. She wasn't just some alien from another world. She was a person with a past, with dreams, with fears. She had come here not because she had no choice, but because she was looking for a future. And Alex was going to help her find it. I don't know much about aliens or space, Alex said with a small smile. But I know one thing. I'm not going to turn you away. You're safe here. I'll protect you. Zora's eyes softened, and she reached across the table, placing her hand gently on his. Thank you, she said quietly. That means more to me than you know. For the first time since she had arrived, Zara seemed at peace, and for the first time, Alex felt like he was beginning to understand his role in this strange new life he had found himself in. Growing closer, the days passed slowly, but Alex and Zara began to settle into a routine. The initial awkwardness between them had started to fade, replaced by a quiet understanding. Zara would help Alex with little things around the house, washing dishes, making tea, or sorting through the papers he had left on the kitchen table. She was careful and attentive, always making sure things were just right. And Alex, in turn, tried his best to make her feel at home. They didn't talk about Zara's past much anymore. She seemed to want to focus on the present, and Alex respected that. But in the small moments, Alex noticed how much she had started to open up. She would smile more, her laugh soft and genuine when something amused her. It was a small change, but it was enough to make Alex feel like they were beginning to build something real together. One evening, after a long day of quiet work at home, Alex found himself in the kitchen, cooking dinner. Zara was sitting at the table, flipping through a book he had given her to read. She had started learning English in the past few days, using the book to help her understand the strange words and phrases that were so different from her own language. Alex admired her determination. She was learning quickly, but he could tell she was still frustrated at times. Dinner's almost ready, Alex said as he stirred the pot on the stove. Zara looked up from her book, her bright eyes catching his. Thank you, Alex, she said softly. I appreciate you doing this. Alex smiled, though he felt a little embarrassed. It's nothing. I'm just making some pasta. Nothing fancy. Zara stood up and walked over to the counter, where Alex had set out some vegetables. I can help, she offered. I may not know much about your food, but I can chop these for you. Alex hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Sure, I'd appreciate that. Zara took the knife carefully, her hand steadied as she started chopping the vegetables. Alex watched her for a moment, feeling a quiet admiration for her. She was different, yes. She was from another world, and she had been through so much. But in this small moment, she seemed just like anyone else, just like him, working together to make something simple. As they worked, their conversation flowed more easily. They talked about small things, the weather, their favorite foods, funny things that had happened in the past. Zara asked more about Earth, about what it was like to live here. Alex tried his best to explain, even though he wasn't sure how much of it made sense to her. But Zara listened, her eyes bright with curiosity, always eager to learn more. "So, what do you miss the most about home?" Alex asked, his voice gentle as he cut the garlic for the sauce. Zara was quiet for a moment, as if she had to think about the answer. Then she spoke, her voice soft, but filled with emotion. "I miss the stars. On Siloria, the stars are so bright, so close. I used to sit by the window at night, watching them. It felt like I could reach out and touch them." Alex nodded, understanding the longing in her voice. "I can't imagine what that must be like. But you know, the stars here are pretty beautiful too. I know it's not the same, but sometimes, when I'm outside at night, I like to just look up and think about how big everything is." Zara looked at him, her eyes soft. "Perhaps we can go outside one evening, together. Look at the stars. Maybe you will understand why they are so important to me." Alex smiled. "I'd like that. We could even bring some blankets, make a little picnic out of it." Zara smiled back, a small but real smile that reached her eyes. "I would like that very much." As they finished preparing the meal, Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of closeness growing between them. The simple act of sharing a meal, of working side by side, was creating a bond he hadn't expected. He didn't know if it was love or something else, but it was something that felt real. Dinner that night was simple, but it was perfect. They ate together, talking about their days and laughing at little jokes. The more they shared, the more Alex realized how much he had come to care for Zara. She wasn't just a guest in his home anymore. She had become a part of his life, and for the first time in a long while, Alex didn't feel so alone. Later, as they finished cleaning up, Zara turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "Alex," she said, "I have been thinking. Maybe it is not just the stars that I miss. It is the feeling of belonging. I don't know where I truly belong now, but I think maybe I am starting to feel like I belong here, with you." Alex's heart skipped a beat at her words. He hadn't expected her to say something like that. It was simple, but it hit him deeply. He turned to face her, meeting her eyes. "I feel the same way," he said quietly. "You belong here, Zara. I'm glad you're with me." Zara smiled, a soft and peaceful smile that made Alex's heart feel lighter. "Thank you, Alex. You have given me more than I ever thought I could find." They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. No more words were needed. They both knew that they were growing closer, that something was changing between them. And though the future was uncertain, Alex couldn't help but feel that, somehow, they would be okay. Trouble from the past. It had been a few weeks since Zara had settled in with Alex. Things had been calm, almost peaceful. They had their routine. Mornings filled with quiet conversations, afternoons spent reading or working, and evenings where they would share simple meals and talk about their days. Alex felt like he was starting to understand Zara more with each passing day. She had become a part of his life in a way he hadn't expected. But as the days went on, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Zara had been quieter than usual lately, and though she tried to hide it, he could tell that something was bothering her. He noticed the way she would look out the window, her expression distant, or the way she would suddenly stop talking when he asked her a question. One evening, as they were sitting together in the living room, Alex decided to ask her directly. He couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when he could see she was struggling. "Zara," Alex said gently, setting down the book he had been reading, "is something wrong? You've been a little distant lately. If something's bothering you, you can talk to me." Zara looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of hesitation and guilt. She opened her mouth to speak, but quickly closed it again. Alex could tell she was weighing her words carefully. Finally, she sighed deeply. "I'm sorry, Alex," she said quietly. "It's just, sometimes my past catches up to me. I try to forget about it, but it's not easy." Alex felt a wave of concern wash over him. "Is it something to do with the people who were after you? The ones from your world?" Zara nodded slowly. "Yes, but it's more than that. They won't just let me go. I'm not safe here, Alex. I thought I could escape them, but they found me." Alex's heart raced. He didn't want to imagine Zara being in danger, especially after everything she had been through. But as much as he didn't want to hear it, he knew he had to understand the full truth. "Who are they?" Alex asked, his voice steady but filled with worry. "What do they want from you?" Zara looked down, her fingers nervously playing with the edge of her sleeve. "They're powerful people from my planet. Ruthless, dangerous. They're the ones who wanted to use me for their own purposes. They didn't care about me as a person. They only wanted to control me, to use me for their power." She paused for a moment, then continued. "But there's one man, a man who has been after me for years. His name is Lord Valor. He's the one who led the group that tried to capture me when I was younger. He's the reason my people's world was torn apart. And now he's found me again." Alex stood up, his hands clenched into fists. He didn't like hearing this, but he knew that Zara needed his help. He couldn't let this man, this Lord Valor, hurt her. "How did he find you?" Alex asked, trying to keep his voice calm despite the anger boiling inside him. "I don't know," Zara said softly, her voice tinged with fear. "I thought I was safe, but there are always ways. He has spies, people who work for him. And now they're looking for me." Alex paced back and forth, trying to process everything she was saying. "What can we do? How do we stop him?" Zara shook her head, her expression filled with sadness. "I don't know. I'm not strong enough to fight him on my own. He has too many resources, too much power. But I don't want to put you in danger, Alex. I don't want to drag you into this." Alex stopped pacing and turned to face her. "You're not dragging me into anything. I'm not going to let anyone hurt you, Zara. You're not alone in this. We'll figure something out. I'll protect you." Zara looked at him, her eyes full of gratitude and pain. "You don't know what you're saying, Alex. He's dangerous. He's done terrible things to people, and I've already brought so much trouble into your life. I don't want you to suffer because of me." Alex stepped closer to her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "I don't care about any of that. You matter to me, Zara. I'm not going to sit here and let some man threaten you. I'll fight for you. We'll figure it out together." Zara's eyes filled with tears as she looked up at him, clearly moved by his words. "You don't have to do this, Alex. I can leave. I'll go somewhere far away, and you won't ever have to worry about me again." Alex shook his head firmly. "No, I'm not going to let you go. I don't want you to be alone, Zara. You've been through enough already." Zara sniffed, wiping away a tear. "I'm so sorry, Alex. I didn't mean to bring this onto you." Alex smiled gently. You didn't bring this on me. This is my choice, and I choose to help you." Zara nodded, her heart lifting a little. She could see the sincerity in Alex's eyes, and for the first time since she had arrived on Earth, she felt truly safe. She wasn't alone anymore. Together, they would face whatever came next. Standing together, the weight of Zara's confession hung in the air between them, but instead of pushing them apart, it seemed to pull them closer. Alex could feel the pressure building inside him. He knew they couldn't hide from the danger that was coming, But he also knew one thing for sure. They would face it together. The next few days were filled with tension. Zara stayed close to Alex, and he made sure to keep an eye out for anything unusual. They didn't know when Lord Valor or his spies would show up, but Alex was determined to be ready. He started researching, looking for any information he could find about Lord Valor, his people, or anything that might help them in case trouble arrived at their door. Zara, too, tried to keep busy, but she wasn't as calm as she appeared. Alex could see it in the way her hands shook when she thought he wasn't looking. She was scared, and he didn't blame her. Lord Valor wasn't just a man. He was a monster, someone who would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. But Alex couldn't let her face this alone. One evening after dinner, they sat together in the living room. The house was quiet, and the soft hum of the world outside seemed distant. Zara had been staring at the window, lost in her thoughts, when Alex spoke up. "Zara, I know you're scared," Alex said gently, his voice filled with understanding. "And I know this isn't easy. But we're in this together. You don't have to carry this alone anymore." Zara turned to him, her eyes soft and filled with gratitude. "I know, Alex. I don't want you to get hurt. You've already done so much for me." Alex smiled and shook his head. "I don't care about the risks. You're important to me, Zara. I will do whatever it takes to keep you safe." Zara's eyes filled with tears. She hadn't expected Alex to say that. All the fear, all the doubt, melted away as she realized just how much he cared. "Thank you, Alex," she whispered. "I don't know what I would do without you." "We don't know what will happen next," Alex continued, his expression serious. "But I promise you, we will fight this together. We will figure out a way to stop him, or at least keep you safe until we do." Zara nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. "I believe you. And I want to help. I don't want to be a burden. I'm not helpless, Alex. I may not have the strength to fight him on my own, but I have my own skills. I'll do whatever it takes to protect us both." Alex's heart swelled at her words. He had never seen Zara like this before. She was no longer just the quiet, reserved woman who had arrived at his door. She was becoming stronger, more confident, and it made him proud. "We'll figure this out," Alex said, reaching out to take her hand. "We'll make a plan. Together." Over the next few days, they worked together to prepare. Zara shared what little she knew about Lord Valor's methods, and Alex began to research anything that could give them an advantage. He learned about Valor's technology, his soldiers, and the resources he controlled. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Zara, for her part, worked on improving her English. She wanted to be able to communicate better with Alex, especially if they were going to face danger together. Alex found it inspiring how determined she was to learn, and he helped her practice every chance he got. The more they worked together, the closer they became. Then, one evening, as they were going over their plans, a loud knock came at the door. Zara's body tensed, and Alex's heart skipped a beat. They both looked at each other, silently acknowledging the danger they had been expecting. It was time. "Stay here," Alex said, his voice steady but filled with concern. "I'll check it out." Zara shook her head, her eyes filled with determination. "I'm not staying behind. I won't hide. I'm part of this now, Alex. I won't leave you alone." Alex opened his mouth to argue but stopped when he saw the look in her eyes. He knew there was no convincing her. She was right. They were in this together, no matter what. Together, they slowly approached the door. Alex's hand hovered over the handle, his mind racing with possibilities. Could it be Lord Valor's men? Was this it? The moment everything would change. He took a deep breath and opened the door. Standing on the other side was a man Alex didn't recognize. He was tall, dressed in a dark uniform that looked military, and his face was hard, stern. He looked around quickly before meeting Alex's eyes. "I'm looking for Zara," the man said, his voice low and dangerous. "I know she's here." Zara's breath caught in her throat, and Alex stepped forward, positioning himself in front of her. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice firm. "What do you want with her?" The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, his eyes flicked to Zara. "She knows who I am," he said, his gaze hard. "And I'm here to take her back." Zara stepped forward, standing beside Alex. "You'll have to go through me first," she said, her voice filled with quiet strength. Alex looked at her, and for the first time, he saw a warrior in her, a woman who wasn't afraid to stand up for what she believed in. He wasn't alone. Together, they were ready for whatever came next. A new life together. The next few days were filled with tension and uncertainty. The man at the door had been one of Lord Valor's men, and although Alex and Zara had been able to drive him off, the danger was far from over. They knew that Lord Valor would not give up easily, and that there would be more trouble ahead. But despite the fear that still lingered, something had shifted in both of them. They were no longer just two people caught in a storm of danger. They had become a team, and together, they felt stronger. The first thing Alex did after the encounter was secure the house. He made sure the doors and windows were locked, and he even set up a few simple traps to alert them if anyone tried to sneak in. Zara, for her part, worked tirelessly to help him, even though her hands trembled slightly with every movement. Alex could see the fear in her eyes, but he also saw her determination. She wasn't the same woman who had come to him so helplessly. She was ready to fight. The days turned into weeks, and though they never stopped looking over their shoulders, they started to build a new life together. Alex took on more responsibility at work, trying to keep things as normal as possible, while Zara focused on making the house feel more like a home. She filled the rooms with small touches of warmth. Fresh flowers in vases, soft blankets on the couch, and the smell of home-cooked meals that Alex had never known before. It was a strange kind of peace, but it was peace nonetheless. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, Alex looked at Zara with a sense of quiet gratitude. She had become such a big part of his life, and no matter how much danger surrounded them, he couldn't imagine being without her. "You know," Alex said, breaking the silence, "I never thought I'd be sitting here with an alien woman, having dinner like this." Zara looked up at him, a small smile playing on her lips. "I never thought I'd be sitting here with a human man either, but I'm glad I am." Alex smiled back. "Me too." They ate their meal in comfortable silence, both savoring the warmth of each other's company. There was still so much uncertainty about what lay ahead, but for the first time in weeks, Alex felt a sense of calm. No matter what happened next, he knew he wouldn't face it alone. Zara was by his side, and that gave him strength. Later that night, as they cleaned up the dishes, Zara turned to Alex, her expression serious. "I know we can't ignore the danger. Lord Valor won't stop coming for me. But I want you to know, I'm not afraid anymore. Not because of him, but because of you. I know we can face anything together." Alex's heart warmed at her words. "I feel the same way. We've made it this far, and we'll make it even farther together." For the first time, Alex realized that the danger from Lord Valor didn't define their lives. It was a part of it, yes, but it wasn't the whole story. They had something stronger now. Each other. They had hope. And hope, Alex knew, was the greatest weapon of all. The next few weeks passed quietly, much to their relief. Alex and Zara continued to work together, strengthening their bond as a couple. They talked about everything. About their pasts, their dreams, and what they wanted for the future. Zara shared more about her world, and Alex learned about the planet where she had grown up. He was fascinated by her stories, and the more he heard, the more he realized just how brave and strong she truly was. It wasn't just her looks that made her beautiful. It was her courage, her resilience, and her heart. But even in their newfound peace, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Lord Valor wasn't the type of person to give up easily, and Alex knew it would only be a matter of time before he made another move. But this time, things would be different. Alex and Zara had been preparing, both mentally and physically. They were ready for whatever came next. One morning, Alex woke up early and found Zara sitting on the balcony, looking out at the rising sun. He joined her, sitting beside her in comfortable silence. For a long while, they just watched the sky, the first light of day spilling across the horizon. "You know, I've been thinking," Alex said after a while, his voice soft. Zara turned to him, raising an eyebrow. "About what?" "About the future," Alex said, his gaze meeting hers. "I know things aren't perfect. We're still on the run from failure. But I want to build a future with you, a real one. Not just hiding from danger." Zara's eyes softened, and for the first time, Alex saw a glimmer of hope in her expression. "A future?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Yeah, I want us to have a life. A real life. One where we can be happy. Maybe one day, things will settle down. Maybe we'll even get married, if you want that." Zara's heart skipped a beat at his words. She had never imagined a life like this, a life where she could be truly happy, free from the shadows of her past. She had always thought she would be running, always looking over her shoulder, never able to settle down. But now with Alex, she could see a different future, a future where she wasn't alone, a future where they could truly live. "I want that too," Zara said, her voice full of emotion. "I want a life with you, Alex. A real one." They sat there together, watching the sun rise, their hands intertwined. The future was still uncertain, and they knew the danger from Lord Valor wasn't over. But in that moment, as the world around them started to wake up, they knew one thing for sure: they had each other. And that was all they needed to face whatever came next. Zara turned to him, raising an eyebrow. "About what?" "About the future," Alex said, his gaze meeting hers. "I know things aren't perfect. We're still on the run from failure. But I want to build a future with you, a real one. Not just hiding from danger." Zara's eyes softened, and for the first time, Alex saw a glimmer of hope in her expression. "A future?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Yeah, I want us to have a life. A real life. One where we can be happy. Maybe one day, things will settle down. Maybe we'll even get married, if you want that." Zara's heart skipped a beat at his words. She had never imagined a life like this, a life where she could be truly happy, free from the shadows of her past. She had always thought she would be running, always looking over her shoulder, never able to settle down. But now with Alex, she could see a different future, a future where she wasn't alone, a future where they could truly live. "I want that too," Zara said, her voice full of emotion. "I want a life with you, Alex. A real one." They sat there together, watching the sun rise, their hands intertwined. The future was still uncertain, and they knew the danger from Lord Valor wasn't over. But in that moment, as the world around them started to wake up, they knew one thing for sure: they had each other. And that was all they needed to face whatever came next.